They say the truth hurts, so you about to feel pain, and I gotta do work, God said I gotta do work, cause it's off with the name, savage truth, savage truth, it's the savage truth, the savage truth, the savage.
This is the Savage Truth, and I'm your host, Pastor Roy Dockery. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to the conversation. To those joining us on YouTube, glad to see you. Make sure you drop a comment. For those that are joining us on any of the audio platforms, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor, Google, whatever, Spotify, welcome back to the audio podcast as well. So just wanted to share something today, and then I'm gonna try to be quick and get out of here because I just wanted to, because it was something that happened today that I wanted to get recorded before it got out of my mind, and I'm sure it's something that can be applicable, almost a Proverbs-like moment in life that we can deal with. So, and so some of you will see the title, and or those that are coming across the audio, or if this just popped up in your feed because it's you're following a playlist. I had a situation today where so I have 3 children. I have a 13-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old daughter, and a 5-year-old son. So today is the first time I've ever had one of my children essentially steal from me, right? So to take something from me that doesn't belong to them, right? I mean, my children have hid things from each other and stuff like that, but not in a matter of where it was something of like significant value, or like, we don't have like cash that comes up missing or jewelry or anything like that. I think prior to this, like somebody may take something that belongs to a sibling or a person and hides it because they were refused access to it or they weren't able to do it. But today was the first time that I've had money come up missing in my house, right? And we've been a parent for 13 years. I've had people living in my house. I've had mentees when I had my record label. Some of my artists were living in my house. You know what I mean? Like there's always been people living in my house, family, friends, because we always open up our home and allow that to be a blessing to other people as they're in periods of transition and just build them up and help them transition. But I've never had to deal with anything in my house coming up missing. You know what I mean? Like I have an abundance of shoes. I have watch collections, right? We tend to leave money laying around. My wife leaves her purse hanging around. We're not really concerned about it because we try to be open. We're extremely giving. And we just know that this is a blessed home. It's a blessed place, right? Where people don't have to want for anything. Our children aren't deprived of anything. Anyone that's in our house, right? Whether you're a dependent of mine or not, you're not going to be deprived of anything. If you need something, we'll take care of you because you're in our house, right? And that's what God has equipped us to do. And that's just the spirit that we operate in within our home. So today we're getting ready to take my son to his baseball game. And so I do a lot of things to incentivize my children with money. And another thing is it made me reflect on this today. Is this wrong? Should I change it? Because for instance, when it comes to grades, my kids get money for grades, depending on, A's, B's. I don't give money for C's. You get no compensation for average in my household. When it comes to like teeth, right? We don't do the teeth fairy. But if I have to go to the dentist and get teeth extracted for my children, it costs me $75. So if my children take their own teeth out, they get $20, right? Saves me $55. It makes them not afraid, and it makes them really engaged in getting their teeth out. So we've been doing that since my daughter was a kid. I know that's a high, inflation around here. It was dollars and change when I was a kid, but everything is expensive nowadays. My kids are in electronics, not bubble gum. So, that incentive structure got to be a little bit different. And so my son just recently started playing t-ball, right? And he hasn't played organized sports. He's only 5. He loves his toys. He loves being able to go to the store and pick up a new action figure or something. So I'm like, hey, one good way to motivate him would be to motivate him with money, right? So the one thing I told him, I said, look, and anyone who's out there who's got kids that have played t-ball, right? You see all the kids out there, they all love hitting the ball, but none of them want to go get it, right? You've got the 1 or 2 kids that'll knock people down and stumble over people to grab the ball. And so one thing I wanted to do is really wanted to get Royce engaged on defense, right? When he's in the field, like I want you to get in front of the ball, stop the ball with your glove, stop the ball with your hand. And so what I told him, I said, look, if you get a hit and your ball goes past the pitcher's mound, but still in the grass, you get $1. If you get a hit and your ball goes into the outfield, so into the dirt, past, outside of like the baseline into the outfield, you get $2. And so I said, that's on offense, right? From an offensive perspective. On defense, I said, if you get in front of the ball, stop the ball with your glove, you get $1. The ball goes past you, you need to run and go get it, but you don't get $1. So I'm trying to teach them the concept, right? And so, in baseball, the coach tells me, like, got to get low and you want to get in front of the ball and you got to scoop it. You do the alligator and you got to get it. And we practice at home when I have time or when I'm in town since I've been back traveling. So incentivize them on that. And so he had his first, so the first time we did it in practice, I think he earned like $3. Then he had his first game. In his first game, he earned $9, and he was just like, and so the next practice, he was like, Dad, like I'm ready, like I'm trying to get my monies. And so there's our house we function on. We use envelopes. So my wife has a weekly budget that we go by, and a certain amount of cash that she gets every week that takes care of her stuff around the house. I'm on allowance, she's on allowance, our kids are on allowance. So we're a very conscious family when it comes to home economics and money and how we talk about money and the value of money and how we use it, how we save it, how we spend it. Our kids know how much it costs for our livelihood, right? They've seen it in cash stacks of how much it costs for us to live the way that we do, so that they understand that, right? They know how much money it is to live in this kind of house and have these kind of vehicles and all of that other stuff. And so it's just visual so that they understand that. And then when they look at that compared to like a job that they want to get in high school because they want to work at Chick-fil-A or a restaurant, and you make $10 an hour, and I show you this lifestyle costs 10 stacks, like that's a lot of hours, right? So so that's the whole dynamic. So my son was really onto it, and he was into it, and he was like, all right, so like before practice, he'll come to me in between offense and defense. How much money did I get? Like did I get credit for that? Like I'm like, all right, you at $2, $3. So Saturday, so October 2nd, and that the morning of the 2nd, we're getting ready. The field where he plays baseball is like 35 minutes from the house. So we're getting ready, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And I like to have the cash on me so I can give it to him, but I didn't want to pull that from my wife's budget for the week. So I went to go grab. So I keep literally like a stack of like discretionary cash in like this crystal bowl that's on a dresser in our bedroom. And so there's just like spare change, like whatever. At the end of the week, my wife just kind of dumps her purse in there. I dump my money in there. And then we come up with like, and I just keep it in there. It's a little wad. So if anybody needs something extra, if we got to, you got to grab some ice cream or something coming through the neighborhood. Okay, cool. We'll do that if it's something not factored into the budget. So I'm looking for it, and I'm looking in the glass, in the crystal bowl. It's actually a very expensive bowl my dad bought us. And I don't really keep a lot of fancy stuff around my house. So the fanciest like centerpiece in my house is just sitting on a dresser. It's like a Vilroy and Bach crystal bowl that has like loose change and money in it. I thought it was appropriate. It was an expensive thing. Let's just throw cash in it, literally. And so I'm looking for the money, and I'm like I know I just added some money to it yesterday. I actually had some money into my pocket that I was going to kind of add to the little roll, and I'm like, where is it at? So I asked him, I'm like, okay, so the only other person in my room would be my wife. So my wife was downstairs talking to one of her mentees on the phone. So I just kind of yelled downstairs real quick and was like, baby, have you seen the cash? Like, did she move it? Did you grab it? And we also have a safe. And sometimes and for a while, I've the money's normally been in the safe, but I'm like, I've just been keeping it on the dresser so I don't have to unlock the safe every time I want to get to it. So, and my wife was like, no, I haven't touched it. And I'm like, I know it was here yesterday because I saw it yesterday. And so my daughters are quiet. They're not saying anything. My one daughter's in the classroom on her computer. My other daughter's in her room watching TV. And I'm like, and I'm in one of the moments again. If y'all didn't see my video, like, when everybody was looking at me like I was crazy because my chocolates got eaten up, or don't nobody know where the Xbox controller is, right? Like stuff just disappears. And I'm like, and I've kind of let some of that stuff slide, but I'm like, this is money. Right. So like if there's money in my house that has disappeared, that means someone in my house is stealing from me. And I don't like that. And for some reason, my wife just was kind of like, because my son's been, leading up to going to practice, he's talking about money a lot. He's like, where's my money? Like, how much money am I going to make? What you think I'm going to do, Dad? Like, how much money did he have left over from his allowance last week? So he's been talking about money a lot because he's 5 and there's a lot of toys that he wants. And he knows that he needs money to buy those toys, and he has to earn that money through his allowance or other means. I just don't buy him a bunch of random stuff. Like my son has an abundance of toys. My son has more toys than I have books behind me, right? Like individual toys, right? They're all over his room. He takes them all out every day. He does play with them. Like he tries to touch almost every toy that he owns every day, which is why his room always looks like somebody just broke into a Toys R Us, right? And ransacked the place. But so I hear my wife downstairs, and as she asked my son, she was like, Royce, do you know where the money is? And the first thing he said was yes. So I'm upstairs, right? I can't see him because I'm looking down my stairs, and my son is over in our family room, which is like over there. And I'm guessing he's on the floor, probably over by the fireplace playing. And so I hear him say that. And so my wife's like, well, can you go show daddy where it is? So I come upstairs, and he just has this look like he feels guilty, but on his face, he's trying to smile. So he's like trying to smile, like I was playing. And so I go and so I walk with him. I follow him into his room. I walk into his room, and his toys are everywhere, right? He's taking out his Paw Patrol stuff, his Ben 10 stuff. And he's looking around the room, and he's trying to remember where he had it. So I noticed on the floor, I saw the rubber band, because there's a rubber band that's normally wrapped around the money as well. Because, I grew up in the hood, and I don't need a money clip, just put some rubber band around your money. That's how it happens. And so he's looking around his room, and then he was like, oh, and he's kind of like laughing, like he was using it as play money or something in the room. And I'm like, okay, but where is it? And then so he goes into his closet, and my son has a pretty big walk-in closet, and we have like a hanging organizer shelf in his closet because he doesn't have that many clothes at his age and his size. So we put a lot of toys and stuff in his closet, and like books and shoes, and that's within the organizer. So then he like moves the organizer out of the way like it's a bat cave. You know what I'm saying? Like he moves the organizer out of the way. Then in the like bottom right corner of his closet, he pulls out my knot roll, right? So and I'm like, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, didn't have the rubber band on it because the rubber band was on the floor in his room. And I'm just like, why? And now I'm angry, right? And I'm trying to show grace. I'm trying to allow the fruits of the Spirit to manifest on my tree of anger at that moment, because I'm just angry. And he's 5, right? So, and then, and the one thing I tell my children, and I stick to what I say, and I'm like, you're not gonna get in trouble with me for telling the truth. You will get in trouble for lying to me. I've been a father for 13 years, right? My oldest daughter just turned 13 a month ago. I have never physically beat any of my children. I've never tapped them. I've never I don't even think I've ever sent them to timeout, right? My wife has been a stay-at-home mom since my children were born. I think my kids may have been tapped once or twice each, like my older children a long time ago, but my children are extremely well behaved. They're very honest. They're very loving. They get along with each other. They take care of each other. They're amazing children. So that is also bothering me. Like, right, I've been doing this for 13 years, and I always have money around my house. I always have valuable things around my house that have never come up missing. And I don't want to feel like if I have cash around, right, that like I can't leave this on a counter because I'm afraid of somebody in my house stealing it. Like, I should never feel that way. I shouldn't feel that way about guests. I definitely shouldn't feel that way around my family. Like, I don't want to have to hide money in a safe in my own house, right? Like, I shouldn't have to be trying to keep things safe in my house from people who live in my house. So, but when I asked my son, I'm like, well, why did you take it? And he just looked at me and he was like, because I wanted it. And I'm like, but what do you mean you wanted it? He was like, I wanted money. And I'm like, okay, but and it's an honest answer, right? Like, in reply, I was telling my wife, I'm like, such a little like dude, right? Like a little man, like this like dominion like mentality, right? Like this ownership. Like my daughters didn't do things like that. Like my son stakes claims on things, right? He has this like, you know what I mean? Like this dominion kind of mentality to where like he wants to conquer things. He wants to explore things. He wants to own things. My daughters were not really attached like a sense of ownership to the things that belong to them. So they would give a lot of stuff away, right? They would be done playing with something, they would give it away. My son's like concept of like ownership is like it's mine, right? And I almost I just like I don't know. I'm attributing it to him being like a little man, right? And seeing, right, like in our household, like I'm the one that earns the money, like, you know what I mean? Like even though my wife deals with most of like the home finances and the shopping and all that other stuff. like everyone in my house knows that I'm the only one who earns income. So but for my son to just be honest, and I asked him like 3 times, and he was like, I wanted it. And then so what I had to, and so what I wound up talking to my son about, which I think is, you know what I mean? Like you have that moment. And so in that moment, I'll be honest, what I wanted to do was spank him. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to snatch the money, grab him, and just stuff that, you know, like a reflection from my past, like what would have happened if money came up missing in my grandmother's house, or my, either one of my paternal or maternal grandmother, if I took something from my mom. And then I'm like, I could have used that opportunity, right? My son was already sad. Like, and I was talking to him in the same voice that I'm using. I don't yell at my kids. I wasn't screaming at my son. I was just talking to him in this very much Pastor Roy Savage Truth-ish kind of voice, because this is how I sound in real life. This is not my TV voice, my, you know what I mean? This is my regular voice. Outside of, you know, sometimes when I talk at work, I got to take some of the bass out of my voice, you know what I mean? Because in white spaces, people get sensitive. And it's just like, you know, I come across as aggressive when I talk in the normal tenor of my voice. But so one of the things is that, like, and in that moment, like I said, what I wanted to do, what would have made me feel stronger, right, in this situation where I'm struggling with the mental idea of like, one of my children can steal from me, right? I've been a father for 13 years. Like, I've never had this happen. But I'm like, but to him, he wasn't stealing, right? It's almost like, you know what I mean? It's almost like that ownership, like what's in this house belongs to us, right? And it's almost like it's in the house and it belongs to him, and he wanted it, so he took it. And so instead of me getting angry and doing really what I wanted to do, and it's probably honestly like 1 of 2 or 3 times in the 13 years of parenting, I wanted to put a hand on a kid, because I don't play with stealing, because I used to be a very good thief, right? So there's certain things, and I forgot what I was studying over sabbatical. But Paul was saying that, like, you know, normally the thing that we focus on the most and that we get the most conviction of was like the most egregious sin that we had. Right. So he was like, those who used to steal become the people who work hard and then use their money to give to other people. Those who used to lie are the ones that become, right, convicted and kind of obsessed with the pursuance of truth. So for me, I'm both of those things, right? I was a very good liar and I was a very good thief. So like, and that's how that, you know what I mean? Like the devil just knows, or like God testing your heart, because those are the 2 things that I despise the most. I despise people that steal things that they don't earn, right? Because it's easy, but it's manipulative, right? And you're abusing people. And then people who lie, right? Because people think it's easy to lie, but it takes a lot of effort. And I preached a sermon on like the burden of lies and the cognitive overhead and the different narrative stories and ethical realities. It should be in the sermons playlist, because it's on my home church's website, World Victory of Greensboro. So if World Victory of Greensboro on YouTube, you guys can subscribe, follow that. That's the church that I typically preach at, and the church that I'm on staff as our kind of outreach and cares ministry pastor as well. But so in that moment, instead of taking that opportunity to get physical or to get angry or to shake him, because and I'll be honest with you, I felt all of those emotions, right? I felt all of the normal, like, physical reactions that you wanted to take. Like, this is my son, right? This is the first like little man in my family, and like, and he stole from me. So I just looked at my son and like, and I'm trying to process, but then, and like, he's starting to cry, and I'm like, and he's, you know, and I can see he's feeling that conviction. And so instead of me taking that moment of conviction and creating a reason for my son to fear me, right? What I told him is, I said, well, so I said, son, like, you wanting the money doesn't make it yours, right? And I asked him, and I got down, and, you know, my wife does this thing, right? She's so wonderful. So like, I bent down, even with my bad knee and my over tight tibial band in my left knee. I bent down to my son at eye level, and he was crying. He was looking down, and I said, son, look at me. And I told him, I said, do I deny you anything? And he was like, no, daddy. And I looked around his room. I said, I think like everything you want is in here. So I said, like, and I was like, and we give you money regularly. Like, I give you money every week, don't I? And he was like, Yes, daddy. And I said, but the key is that you earn it. So I said, just wanting money is not enough. You have to earn it. And I said, when you take something that you have not earned, right? When you take something, and this is actually in the book that I did a review on, you know what I'm saying? Like, thank God for Bitcoin. Like stealing, like theft, is taking something that you didn't earn. And so I told him, I was like, son, you stole from me because that money belonged to me. That was my money that I earned. And you took something from me that I earned without earning it. And I'm like, what I have is always available and accessible to you. And even this week, just because he had been doing really good, he hadn't been complaining at school, he wanted a new video game for his Switch. He wanted Spyro. So before I went out of town this week, or before I went out of town, that like this last week in September and it's going into October, I actually, I went to GameStop. I tried to buy it in person. It wasn't available. And so I had it delivered to the house. It got back to the house the day after I got home, which was on Thursday. So on Thursday, like I got the game, popped it into a Switch form. We're sitting there, we're playing Spyro, because it's one of the games that he likes to watch online. And I told him, and I said, like, you've been wanting Spyro, and just because you've been doing what you were supposed to be doing, right? Like I said, you earned something that you didn't even expect. So like, I bought that game for you. Like, you didn't have the money to buy that game. I said, I had the money to buy the game, so I got it for you just because you're my son. So I'm like, do you understand why it would frustrate me that you would steal from me when everything I have is yours? And he was just like, yes, daddy. And he's crying, and he's got his baseball jersey on, right? Because we're getting ready for the game. And then even in that moment, right, I had that feeling that I feel when I tell my Grinchness, right? When I was like, well, hug him right now. But I'm like, I'm not hugging the little thief who stole my money, and I just had to give a motivational speech too. And so I was like, let's go, let's get ready. And I stood up, stepped back, and let him walk by. And he was just walking slowly, right? And then even in that, like, I felt the conviction. I'm like, you need to hug your son right now. So I called him. I said, Royce, come here, son. And he came, and I picked him up, and I hugged him. And I just told him, I said, I love you, and I'm not mad at you. Right. So in that opportunity, there's a lot of things to do, but it's like, and mind you, all of this happened in the course of like, 3 to 5 minutes. Right. But trying to be in tune with your own conviction, with the Spirit of God, and manifesting the fruits of the Spirit, even in the actions that we take. Too often as parents, we are very patient and we are very gracious with everybody but our own children. And I see this. I see people who are in youth ministry who are so passionate and so engaged and so kind to other children, right? We had this issue at the swim class that my daughter's at, where like there were these moms who were like overly promoting and congratulating my daughter, yet they didn't say anything positive to their own children. So my daughter was like, why are you cheering for me? Like, my parents are here. They encourage me. We already have plans for what we're doing after this, right? If I hit these milestones and these goals. And like, you're not saying anything to your own kids. So that's weird to my children, to see somebody who compliments other children, but doesn't compliment their own. And so like in that moment, I had an opportunity that I could show grace, that I could try to teach, that I should try to manifest and exemplify the fruits of the Spirit. Or I could just come down with the rod on a 5-year-old who didn't, you know what I mean? He didn't hide it from me. He didn't lie about it. And he was honest about why he did it. Like, for me, honesty, right? Like, this is the Savage Truth podcast. The truth is the most important thing to me. And he didn't hide anything from me. So I couldn't punish him for that. Because if I would have punished him, I wouldn't have been punishing him for stealing. I would have been punishing him for telling the truth. And that's what we've got to be careful about, right? If somebody had an infraction, if somebody had a sin, I was thinking about this just because of how the church responds to people who are pregnant. Right? And who are pregnant out of wedlock. Being pregnant out of wedlock is not the sin, right? This is why we lose all these arguments, pro-lifeness, and we get into all of this nonsense. Like, the fornication was the sin, but if you make the reality of them being pregnant and the biology that occurred, that created the conception that brought about the life, and that the life in itself is not a blessing, you know what I mean? Like, you make the life, you make the baby, you make the pregnancy the state of sin. The sin right? That's why people start to falter with the discussion about, well, what about when someone's raped? What about instances of incest? Because like now the sin was someone else's. And since we act like, and we have a mentality of the fact that being pregnant while not married is the sin. That's not the sin. Fornication is the sin, right? If someone gets in vitro fertilization and didn't have sex with somebody outside of marriage and yet they're pregnant, are you saying that's a sin to be pregnant without a husband, right? Like, we don't think about what we say because we're not responding from a spiritual place. We're responding from a logical place. We're responding from a judgmental, emotional place, right? We're responding from an emotionally kind of stifled, unintelligent place. And that's one of the things that we have the opportunity to exercise these things where we're in the heat of the moment and we've got an opportunity to show grace and be the kind of father, be the kind of parent that God is to us, to our own children. And that's what I would encourage you to do, right? Like, if we can show grace in traffic, if we can show grace at Target, if we can show grace at work, then we need to learn how to show grace at home. And I almost missed that today. Like even if I would have done all of that and had all of the good words and all of that other stuff, I felt like it would have all been an absolute fail if I did not hug my son, if I didn't embrace my son and bring him in close. And it's something I did not want to do. I didn't, right? And it's not because I'm not a touchy-feely kind of father. Like, I hold my son like most of the day, right? My son is on my back. My son is in my arms. I kiss my son. I kiss his head. We do nubs where we we nub like on the edge of each other's ears. It's just the thing that we do because I don't want my son to feel like because he's the masculine member of my house that he doesn't get my affection. All of my children get my affection. And because my son is the smallest, both of my daughters are 5 feet tall now. He gets a lot more of my physical affection. I pick him up. I carry him. You know what I mean? He sits on my lap when we play video games and we just lounge on the couch and chill. So like, you know what I mean? So I didn't want him to feel, even though he did something that I think he was still carrying the conviction for emotionally, I didn't want him to feel like he had a disconnect from me physically. And I almost missed that opportunity. So what I'm going to say is just walk in that grace, right? We've got to learn how to operate in forgiveness. If family is our first ministry, then the real reflection of the way that we serve God, it should be, all right, the primary place that should be on display and demonstrated is the way that we love the people who are within our homes. So that's what I wanted to share. And I thought that was going to be a lot shorter than usual. So anybody who's watching this on YouTube, you will notice that behind my head, I'm gonna go this way, behind my head in that box back there. If anyone's ever seen my Superman music video, if you haven't, you can go watch it on YouTube. But that's a kryptonite rock, right? Because one thing that my sabbatical taught me is that when I'm in this house, I don't need to be Superman because my family is amazing. So my kryptonite is active. You know what I'm saying? And I can just be a regular person here, right? There's no facade. I'm not projecting anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here human and as vulnerable and transparent as possible. So thank you. I hope you can glean something from that. I don't know what future content will look like, right? We're just getting back into this. This happened today. I wanted to share it because I thought it could be impactful. And that will be what we hear about this week on Savage Truth Tuesday. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing to the YouTube channel, to the podcast. On your preferred listening apparatus, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever. Shout out to the Discord. If you're not in the Discord community, if you're not connected to the Discord family, make sure you click that link in the description. If you're on the podcast, or if you're on YouTube, check out the link in the description box below. It should be active for you to join the Savage Truth on server on Discord so we can communicate, because that's the only social media I'm interacting with. So look forward to seeing you there. The Patreon is still out here and active as well. Feel free to jump on that. But other than that, thank you for joining. Glad to be back. I'm glad to share something with you. I pray that God continues to keep you, that you continue to feel his love, and that you continue to exemplify the fruits of his spirit in your life so people can see the gospel live and up front. So thank you. Love you. God bless. Peace out.
They keep asking who I am, I just tell them I'm a Christian. Occupation, a description, I just tell them I'm a Christian. Nationality, ethnicity, I tell them I'm a Christian.